I have had some interesting book haul adventures lately, and I just wanted to talk about that and show off what I bought. I mean, what else is book haul for? Not too long ago, I went on my regular date with my wife up to Denton to go to Recycled Books and have some coffee. And while we were there, I got to have coffee with Jake from Pulp Morum. I'll share his book haul in the comments where he mentioned me. And it was great. We got to hang out, talk about books, drink some coffee. And then he left to go sell some books at Recycled Books. And then I met up with him again, and like he says in his video, we basically stood in the aisle with the pulp paperbacks and just talked for a very long time. Blocked the whole aisle, I mean, who else is going down that aisle to buy junky old paperbacks other than us? And it was a ton of fun. It was really great to meet a booktuber in person, and it was great to just nerd out about all the books over there. I mean, that's like the great thing about BookTube is you have a place to nerd out about books and talk to other people that like books as much as you do. So getting to do it in person is quite the treat. It's pretty rare for me. When we met up, he gave me a couple of books and I want to talk about them. The first one he gave me is the Texas-Israeli War 1999 by Jake Saunders and Howard Waldrop. And when he handed me the book, I was like, I recognize that name, Harold Waldrop, but I couldn't figure out where, so I looked it up real quick. He wrote the first story in Wildcards, and fun fact, Wildcard Day takes place on Harold Waldrop's birthday. And also, he never wrote again in Wildcards, which is strange. His story is like one of the best pulp inspired short stories I've ever read. If you handed it to me and said that someone had written it in 1938 or something, I would have believed you, except like it was higher quality than your average pulp. So this is going to be interesting. The first sentence of the description like sells it. On August 12th, 1992, England's tiny nuclear arsenal fell on Ireland, on South America, and finally on China. It's like, why? I mean, like, yeah, China, I guess makes sense. South Africa, maybe in this alternate future, there's like an apartheid superstate or something, but why did they nuke the Irish? Why did England nuke Ireland? And he gave me another book that he said was recommended to him and that it was really fun, and that is Kung Fu, The Year of the Snake by Li Chang, the second action-packed adventure in the first Kung Fu series in print. This is from Manor Books, and what's funny is on the back, you have the Manor Books seal of guaranteed reader satisfaction. If you're not happy with the book you bought, you can pay postage, send it back to them, and they will give you a book in the same genre that they guarantee you will like. You think they'll still do that? Does Manor Books still exist? What if I don't like this? Can I send it back and they'll give me another book in the genre? Chinatown exploded with violence. Youth gangs ran wild. The grip of terror was so widespread that the family Tongs asked Mace, the master of Kung Fu, for help. This is going to be ridiculous in like all the best ways. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully it's not any terrible stereotypes. Probably is. I guess I'll find out. And after he gave me those books and we met up at Recycled, I kind of went and did my own thing, let him do his own thing. And I found a book club edition, unfortunately, but these are hard to come by. Corum, the Prince with the Silver Hand. This is book 12 in the Eternal Champion series that was published by Borealis, aka White Wolf. I want to make a video about them. They printed some absolutely amazing stuff before they went bankrupt, and I think they really did a service to the science fiction and fantasy community at the time because this stuff just wasn't getting printed. Also, the guy at Recycled Books pointed out that this is a Mike Mignola cover, which is the guy who created Hellboy. Pretty cool. Yeah, I was super happy I found this. I actually screwed up, and I'm gonna let this be a lesson to everyone out there. Do some research on books before you buy them if you've got the opportunity to. I already owned a copy of this. I didn't realize it at the time. That's another thing. Take pictures of your bookshelves so you always have the information with you. This is Corum, The Coming of Chaos, which is book 7. And I was like, oh, cool. They had it labeled as a first edition. And I was like, oh, all right. And I brought it home and realized I already had a copy. And then I realized that this is not a first edition. This is a book club edition. It's a little taller. It's a little thinner. It has some differences in quality of the dust jacket and everything else. So I'm kind of bummed, but I'll just end up selling this on eBay properly listed as a book club edition, or just give it to someone that's interested in the series. So yeah, that kind of sucked. I was like, oof, I'm gonna take that L. Luckily, I didn't pay first edition prices for it. And I also picked up something I've been eyeballing at Recycled Books for a while, and it's been up there for like $4, and I just never picked it up because I've usually got a ton of other stuff, and I'm like, I'll get to it someday. I'll get to it someday. Usually that stuff ends up being bought, and then I just miss out on it. But nope, I picked up The Best of Damon Knight. It's a book club edition, and I do like book club editions, but like with the Eternal Champion set, I want all hardcovers or at least trade paperback. But the Best of Damon Knight is really interesting because Damon Knight is, well, it says it at the beginning of this, so let me describe Damon Knight. Damon Knight, besides being one of the top SF anthology editors in the field, is also widely respected as one of the genre's chief exponents of sardonic wit and unusual adventure. And while his output may be small, each of his stories is a gem to be read and treasured. Yeah, the interesting thing is not only was Damon Knight known for science fiction anthologies, he was a critic of science fiction. So I'm really looking forward to digging into this and just learning more about his writing. And this book's in pretty good shape. Like, it's got a little rough stuff, but got a broad art, which makes it a lot easier to justify because a broad art's like $1. And if I can buy a book with it, then that just means that I'm technically saving $1 when I buy it. I went to my local library. I get posts from them on Instagram when new books are for sale in the Friends of the Library section. And I got The Game Must Go On, Hank Greenberg, Pete Gray, and the Great Days of Baseball on the Home Front in World War II. I have been really interested in learning more about this time in baseball because a lot of players went off to fight in World War II. Some of Ted Williams' best seasons didn't happen because he was a fighter pilot. And what's interesting is on the cover, this dude's got one arm. It's like a one-arm baseball player. He was just talking about how at one point with all these star athletes leaving, the president had to decide whether or not to suspend sporting events like this. And the leagues had to decide whether or not this was going to happen as well. And instead of suspending them, the game must go on. So we end up with a lot of players who had no right to be in Major League Baseball playing, and it's just really fascinating. And it's got, of course, it's got the little section in the middle that's a bunch of photos. So I'll be looking forward to checking those out. And it's just a fascinating era in baseball because when you look at baseball stats from that time, you're like, oh, what? This guy had 3 good seasons and then fell off a cliff and then never played baseball again. And it's like, oh, he was playing during the war seasons. Just really interesting stuff comes out of shortened seasons or seasons during wars like that. Like Ted Williams also missed time during the Korean War. He would probably be #1 for hitting ever if he had had those seasons. So it's just really fascinating. I got a little secret for you. One, I'm going to complain about half-price books again, but also I'm going to point something out. I found Tarzan of the Apes, which is the first book in the series, in the kids section for $2. The older paperbacks are like $5 or more because half-price books has lost their mind. But yeah, I found this for $2 because it's whatever. It's just one printed for kids, and I'm not saying buy all the books that in the kids section so kids can't have them, but I bought this for my daughter. I'm probably going to read it to her. That way I can edit out some of the problematic things in here. It's not too bad. The bad one is the second book. There's a scene in it where I'm like, that's the most racist thing I've read maybe ever. But Tarzan of the Apes is still a fun story. So I'm glad I picked up a copy for $2. Now my complaint is going to go along with this copy of Cordelia's Honor I found, which it was only $10. So it's like half the price you find the book on eBay. But I went to a half price books outside my usual roaming grounds because I had to drive my car on the highway because it had check engine lights and all that crap. Working on cars sucks, but someone's got to do it and I ain't paying for it. Anyways, I get to this half price books and I start looking in the older book section first where all the vintage stuff is because that's like my bread and butter now. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh, cool. Octavia Butler book club edition. I pick it up. Wow, $75. Nope. Put that back and I'm like, oh, cool. Stephen King's The Stand with no dust jacket in rough condition. $35. And I'm like, wow, what is going on? Then I find a hardcover copy of The Annals of the Black Company, which is the first 3 books. It's a book club edition that came out in the 80s. It is the first and only time that Shadows Linger is in a hardcover. It was the first time The Black Company was printed in a hardcover of any kind. And anyways, they're not super rare. I bought a copy for $5, and then when one of my friends was here visiting, this was years ago of course, but when one of my friends was visiting, I got another copy for him for $2. So I paid $7 for 2 of them. They're not super rare. They had one at this store and I'm like, oh cool. I pick it up. It's $40. I am now referring to that specific store as crack price books because it is absurd. And well, I'm done ranting now. That copy of Cordelia's Honor is really cool because that is Shards of Honor and Barriar, which are the first 2 books you should read in the Vorkosigan saga. So I was super happy to get that. I haven't read Barriar yet and I really need to. And I'm really happy I found a good physical copy. Yeah, it's a book club edition, but it's one of those things where they bundle up 2 of the books, so that saves me a little shelf space which I can appreciate. Speaking of book club editions, I went to my regular half price books because I do have a rule with my wife. I don't leave the house unless I'm forced to on my days off, unless she's driving. I don't like driving, which that's a whole nother thing. I drive a lot for work, so I try to avoid driving any other time. But I tell her, I was like, well, I had to leave the house in the middle of the day and I had to drive and do something. So I have to stop at a bookstore. So I went to my local half price books and I found this book club edition of Wish Songs of Shanara. It was like $4.50. And what's funny is I peeled the price tag off and underneath it was another price tag from half price books from 1997. And it was $4.98 then. So I got quite the bargain adjusted for inflation. This is book 3 in the Shanara series. I have the first book in a book club edition and now I've got book 3. So I just got to pick up book 2, which I'll find in a book club edition somewhere. Now, my main reason for going to my regular half price books was because I knew that they had a copy of this and I was hoping it was still there. And that was Duma Key by Stephen King. And this is a first edition. It's not a first printing, but I don't care. It's in immaculate shape. It looks like it's never been read. And the reason I picked up Duma Key was for one very big reason. I found out that John D. MacDonald is one of Stephen King's favorite writers. Also found out that I own a book club edition copy of Night Shift where John D. MacDonald wrote the introduction. Didn't know that. I've got to read that immediately. Stephen King was such a big fan of John D. MacDonald that he used one of his books when he was still a teacher. Like he was teaching literature with John D. MacDonald. And then at one point, Stephen King wrote an article for the Sarasota Springs newspaper, which I can't find online and it's driving me nuts. And I really hope I don't have to subscribe to newspapers.com to be able to get it, but I might have to. But anyway, Stephen King wrote an article about how important John D. MacDonald was to his writing. And I'll tell you one thing, when you read both of them side by side, you can see a lot of John D. MacDonald in Stephen King's style. And the reason I picked up Duma Key is because it is Stephen King's John D. MacDonald book. Like the main character has all the Travis McGee vibes. It takes place in Florida and it feels like a John D. MacDonald book. Like I just cracked it open to a random page and was looking in it and I'm like, wow, yeah, this reads like John D. MacDonald. This is wonderful. And so I am really looking forward to it. And a handful of people that I really trust when it comes to Stephen King said that everyone's been sleeping on Duma Key. Like it's one of his better books and I'm really looking forward to it. I've noticed that the Stephen King I really enjoy is the stuff that isn't what Stephen King is known for. Like I love Eyes of the Dragon. And before that, I loved Blockade Billy, which basically no one has read, which you should though. It's pretty good, especially if you like baseball. But anyways, yeah, Duma Key, super hyped about that. I'm probably going to get to that sooner than later because I just keep looking at it and it just looks so good. But that's all I got. This was quite a fun book haul. Did a lot of driving, which of course I already complained about, but overall, pretty good haul. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these. Let me know in the comments if your half price books has insane prices. That name is such an incredible misnomer at this point. But yeah, I'm gonna stop before I rant some more. Thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.